Okay, so I had somebody ask if I could show the racing setup that I use and all the equipment and everything, and I think it'd be most helpful to go through the setup I use here, but then also show what my in-game settings are. So I am running a Fanatec wheel, and this is the Forza bundle that I don't know if it's just sold out right now or discontinued, but this was just a Forza wheel, and in the Fanatec world, each one of these components is separate, and I'll go through them. But the wheel to me is almost just how it looks or feels, but I don't think this wheel itself has a whole lot to do with how the game plays. Then these buttons here and all this are what they call a universal hub. So this stuff here, all these buttons are actually separate from the wheel. So you got to buy each component separately. Then this is kind of they call it the base. This is the V2.5 base, and this is kind of the engine that runs everything. And that's kind of, I guess you'd call it a belt drive system, as you can kind of see it move there. Then I've got, I think these are the V3 pedals, and this stuff is all mounted on a Wheel Stand Pro, which I like pretty well. But it does have a few drawbacks. One is I had to secure the pedals using zip ties. There's not really a place for screws to really mount the pedals on there good. So that's the big thing. And the other thing is, does not have a place for a shifter up here. So I don't play with a shifter anyway, but if I ever wanted to upgrade to one, I don't really have a place to put it here. But overall, the Wheel Stand Pro seems to work pretty well. And then I don't really have a rig. This is an old office chair. Just a kind of I don't know where I got it, but it was either free or cheap, but it's just an old office chair. But that's the setup that I use, and I will go through what the in-game settings are, because I think the in-game settings are important too, and then I'll kind of merge these two things together. Okay, so this is part 2 of the video, because I wanted to show the in-game settings. I think that's probably just as important. I think that's, well, maybe not as important, but that's valuable to see what my settings are. I run it on expert mode. I don't run any assists or anything like that. I do run brake smoothing at low. That seems to help keep you from locking the brakes up, especially when you're coming into pit road on a green flag pit stop. I don't know what the difference is between low and high. I know that, and I don't know that I've ever really tried it with off. But a lot of people say that makes a big difference getting onto pit road, so I've just kind of gone with it. The driving is on expert. There's no assists. The player 1 controls. This is probably something that I think is really important. And I would tell you, if you've got a wheel, don't mimic these exact settings, but understand why they are where they are, and then apply that to your wheel. I use the paddle shifters, and I don't use a clutch. I do not have a shifter, a manual shifter like you would see in a real sports car or something. I just use the paddle shifters. My effect strength is a little bit low. I want to be able to feel the effects, but I don't want it to vibrate so hard that it knocks the wheel out of my hand or something, and that's just what's comfortable to me. If you run a different kind of wheel, what's comfortable to you may be more to the left or more to the right, but that's kind of where I would suggest being in a spot where somewhere on this range where you can feel everything, but not so hard that it makes it too hard to drive. The centering spring, I'm a big believer in the centering spring. That you run the centering spring on, I think it makes you much more consistent. And what a centering spring does is when you're turning the wheel to the left, it's giving you resistance and wanting to pull it back to the center. And that resistance lends itself to giving you a much more consistent turn in the wheel. And when you come off the corner and turn it back, it's not going to like spring it back all the way back to where it's turning right. It just kind of brings it back to the middle. I run no dead zones. I don't know anybody that does. These are my settings for the steering range and sensitivity, and let me explain why I've got them set the way they are, as well as the brake and throttle. And the best way to do that is to test the sensitivity. And what I'm going to show you is on this sensitivity, and I wish I had the webcam hooked up so you could see my hands, but when I'm turning the wheel to the right, when the wheel itself is as far right as it will go, I want that little
dial there or ball to be all the way to the right. So I don't want to be turning the wheel and say, oh, the ball's all the way to the right, and then I can turn the wheel another 2 or 3 inches. I want it to be symmetrical, for lack of a better word, so that when that ball is all the way to the left, the wheel has no more motion to the left. And then the same thing with the brake and throttle. When I'm pushing on the throttle, right there is all the way down. Okay, so as soon as I move my foot even, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch, it's going to move. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to do, and the brake is the same way. But that's why I've got these things set the way they are, is because I want that full range of motion and I want it to be symmetrical. So that's kind of the combination of the setup I've got and the settings I am playing with. Hope that is helpful, and I hope that answers the question that I got in the comments. And if it doesn't, leave me a comment and I'll see if I can provide you a better answer.